Total Eren is a global independent power producer. We develop, finance, invest in, build and operate wind, solar and hybrid power plants globally. We stay owner of our power plants over the long term and sell electricity to our clients worldwide, public utilities, private industrials, and rural communities. Across continents, we develop greenfield energy solutions of different sizes and for both public and private customers. In less than 10 years, we have built up a substantial and diversified portfolio of about 3 gigawatt of renewable energy assets worldwide. In particular, we tackle the needs of energy-intensive industrials, like mining companies. Clean power can be a sound business and sustainable decision. Benefits of renewable energy solutions are numerous. It can decrease their OPEX, hedge against fuel price volatility, improve their carbon footprint, enhance their social license to operate, and allow them to leave a sustainable legacy after business closure. In Burkina Faso, for instance, we built a 15 megawatt solar power plant at the IM Gold Isikan gold mine, connected to a large HFO-fired power plant. The solar power plant will smoothly inject competitive and clean energy throughout the day, while a tailor-made hybrid energy management architecture ensures at all time the stability and reliability of the mine power supply, thanks to a dynamic calculation of spinning reserve based on the available solar energy production, the engine's parameters, and an optimized operating strategy. The solar power plant will help the mine decrease its fuel consumption by 6 million liters per year and cut emissions of CO2 by 18,500 tons per year. Here at Isikan and everywhere in the world, we design and customize the most economical solutions for our clients and bring them to financial close and execution.
Think when you live in darkness, always. Living in darkness is extremely difficult and dangerous. You cannot think big in time you live in darkness.
Households living in darkness typically end their day at sunset. By having access to light, it allows them to improve their quality of life and spend more time together as a family and community.
2 out of 3 people in sub-Saharan Africa lack access to power, a number that is being revised upward as population growth outpaces electrification. This strangles prospects right from the get-go, compromising education, health, and entrepreneurship. This infrastructure deficit also constrains the industrial development needed to address poverty and to enable business and economic growth. But there is a light. The requirement for additional power generation represents a significant opportunity in sub-Saharan Africa. Annual investment in the power sector of $46 billion is required until 2040. There is a strong push by global institutions to support the power sector, and a growing track record of best-of-breed bankable IPPs. Cooperation between public and private sector is fundamental to creating these energy infrastructure opportunities, with funders, operators, and local partners working together to unlock this potential. And as the largest and most experienced institutional infrastructure investor in Africa, AIM is in the driving seat of this progress. With a 19-year track record, AIM's commitment to Africa's social development is core to its pursuit of improved power, transport, and energy infrastructure across the continent. AIM's recent investment in Bbox is one that really brings this investment ethos to life. An affordable, clean, off-grid solar energy solution being rolled out in Rwanda, Kenya, and the DRC. With attractive market dynamics, credible partners, a staged investment and scalable business model, and a strong ESG impact, this investment has impacted over 600,000 people thus far and provided more than 63,000 school children with the electricity they need to study well and step towards their future potential. From off-grid renewables and grid-tied renewable IPPs to multi-fuel power stations, our investment portfolio is designed with one thing in mind: powering the African continent with opportunities. In Mali, the lack of reliable grid power, much needed for both industry and mining, is a significant barrier to growth, with much of the available energy imported at a high premium. Enter Albatross Energy Mali, a €133 million thermal power investment achieved through strong partnerships, flexible funding structures, upfront concession agreements, and sovereign security structures, resulting in access to power with increased reliability and reduced cost, enabling the wheels of industry and economic growth to turn more rapidly, as they have through AIM's investments across the continent in South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Kenya, Rwanda, DRC, Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Mali, through solar PV and off-grid generation, wind, thermal, hydro, and midstream power solutions, creating the reliable, efficient power underpinning inter-Africa industry, trade, and socio-economic growth. With its market-leading experience, expertise, and stakeholder relationships, AIM is seeking to invest in long-term assets, providing the bedrock for robust economic growth, mitigating risk through strategic investments which bridge the infrastructure deficit, making a tangible contribution to local economies and communities alongside superior investor returns, and contributing to the global growth agenda encompassed by the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. For almost 2 decades, we have garnered over 550 collective years of industry experience, growing assets under management of more than $2.1 billion through 7 funds and 56 portfolio companies operating in 17 countries across the continent. With a power portfolio of 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity, including almost 30% of the renewable energy being delivered to South Africa's national grid. We are AIM, and we are committed to powering progress on the African continent.
Total Eren is a global independent power producer. We develop, finance, invest in, build and operate wind, solar and hybrid power plants globally. We stay owner of our power plants over the long term and sell electricity to our clients worldwide, public utilities, private industrials, and rural communities. Across continents, we develop greenfield energy solutions of different sizes and for both public and private customers. In less than 10 years, we have built up a substantial and diversified portfolio of about 3 gigawatt of renewable energy assets worldwide. In particular, we tackle the needs of energy-intensive industrials, like mining companies. Clean power can be a sound business and sustainable decision. Benefits of renewable energy solutions are numerous. It can decrease their OPEX, hedge against fuel price volatility, improve their carbon footprint, enhance their social license to operate, and allow them to leave a sustainable legacy after business closure. In Burkina Faso, for instance, we built a 15-megawatt solar power plant at the IM Gold Isikan gold mine. Connected to a large HFO-fired power plant, the solar power plant will smoothly inject competitive and clean energy throughout the day, while a tailor-made hybrid energy management architecture ensures at all time the stability and reliability of the mine power supply, thanks to a dynamic calculation of spinning reserve based on the available solar energy production, the engine's parameters, and an optimized operating strategy. The solar power plant will help the mine decrease its fuel consumption by 6 million liters per year and cut emissions of CO2 by 18,500 tons per year. Here at Isikan and everywhere in the world, we design and customize the most economical solutions for our clients and bring them to financial close and execution.
Think when you live in darkness, always. Living in darkness is extremely difficult and dangerous. You cannot think big in time you live in darkness.
Households living in darkness typically end their day at sunset. By having access to light, it allows them to improve their quality of life and spend more time together as a family and community.
2 out of 3 people in sub-Saharan Africa lack access to power, a number that is being revised upward as population growth outpaces electrification. This strangles prospects right from the get-go, compromising education, health, and entrepreneurship. This infrastructure deficit also constrains the industrial development needed to address poverty and to enable business and economic growth. But there is a light. The requirement for additional power generation represents a significant opportunity in sub-Saharan Africa. Annual investment in the power sector of $46 billion is required until 2040. There is a strong push by global institutions to support the power sector, and a growing track record of best-of-breed bankable IPPs. Cooperation between public and private sector is fundamental to creating these energy infrastructure opportunities, with funders, operators, and local partners working together to unlock this potential. And as the largest and most experienced institutional infrastructure investor in Africa, AIM is in the driving seat of this progress. With a 19-year track record, AIM's commitment to Africa's social development is core to its pursuit of improved power, transport, and energy infrastructure across the continent. AIM's recent investment in BBOX is one that really brings this investment ethos to life. An affordable, clean, off-grid solar energy solution being rolled out in Rwanda, Kenya, and the DRC. With attractive market dynamics, credible partners, a staged investment and scalable business model, and a strong ESG impact, this investment has impacted over 600,000 people thus far and provided more than 63,000 school children with the electricity they need to study well and step towards their future potential. From off-grid renewables and grid-tied renewable IPPs to multi-fuel power stations, our investment portfolio is designed with one thing in mind: powering the African continent with opportunities. In Mali, the lack of reliable grid power, much needed for both industry and mining, is a significant barrier to growth, with much of the available energy imported at a high premium. Enter Albatross Energy Mali, a 133 million euro thermal power investment achieved through strong partnerships, flexible funding structures, upfront concession agreements, and sovereign security structures, resulting in access to power with increased reliability and reduced cost, enabling the wheels of industry and economic growth to turn more rapidly, as they have through AIM's investments across the continent in South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Kenya, Rwanda, DRC, Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Through solar PV and off-grid generation, wind, thermal, hydro, and midstream power solutions, creating the reliable, efficient power underpinning inter-Africa industry, trade, and socio-economic growth. With its market-leading experience, expertise, and stakeholder relationships, AIM is seeking to invest in long-term assets, providing the bedrock for robust economic growth, mitigating risk through strategic investments which bridge the infrastructure deficit, making a tangible contribution to local economies and communities alongside superior investor returns, and contributing to the global growth agenda encompassed by the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. For almost 2 decades, we have garnered over 550 collective years of industry experience, growing assets under management of more than $2.1 billion through 7 funds and 56 portfolio companies operating in 17 countries across the continent. With a power portfolio of 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity, including almost 30% of the renewable energy being delivered to South Africa's national grid. We are AIM, and we are committed to powering progress on the African continent.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Africa Energy Forum. I've had a busy day so far. From the comfort of my home, I've been to Nigeria. I've been to Abidjan for the Utility of the Future session with the African Development Bank. I've been to South Africa for the AFSIA Solar Awards, and I'm delighted that Olede Osaka, the CEO of Daystar, is with us today, and she won the Woman in Solar of the Year award. So congratulations to Olede. This is a really great session, and I want to thank John for moderating this panel. John and I got to know each other about 6 months ago and have been working on a number of projects. And when John mentioned that he wanted to do a session on the growing role of solar digitalization in CNI, we obviously threw ourselves at it. So much of our target market is interested in this space. It's such an important part of the sector going forward. And John and the AFSIA organization are doing so much to promote solar. So we're really fantastic, really pleased to have them as a partner. And we're delighted that John's here to lead this session. So John, thank you for everything. Congratulations on the awards. It was an absolute joy to watch. Really fantastic. Congratulations on everything. Over to you. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Simon, for the kind introduction. And thank you and your team for helping pull off an amazing show for the Solar Awards. And you're right. I mean, I'm personally very excited to be moderating this panel this afternoon, because we are at the crossing of two very exciting things. Solar, of course, booming everywhere, but particularly in Africa. Within solar, the CNI space also booming, and then on top of this, all the digital solutions, all the digital aspects of things that really create a brand new world for this particular segment. And today, I'm really lucky to have like an amazing panel of speakers, not less than 3 CEOs joining me this afternoon, who will tell you all about all that you need to know about digitalization in the CNI space. Unfortunately, internet is playing a little trick on us right now, and one of our speakers, Rizwan, was not able to join us. But nevertheless, we will be learning a lot from our 3 remaining speakers. I would like to introduce them in the way they will present today. So I will start with Svet, who is the co-founder and CEO of AMP Technologies. It's a company that is really specialized in the management of portfolio of assets, remote assets in the most complex locations you can think of. Svet will tell us all about this. Following this, we will have Olede, who will tell us about what digitalization actually means from a developer's point of view, because she manages a very large portfolio of installations in West Africa. And then finally, we will have Thierry, who will share with us his point of view from the financing side of things. Thierry is the CEO of Empower New Energy, a company specialized in financing CNI installations in Africa. I will let my colleagues on the technical side confirm if we get a chance to connect with Rizwan later. If we do, happy to inform you that Rizwan is the CTO at Huawei, very known company, of course, and Rizwan would tell us about all the latest innovations related to digital solutions on the hardware side of things. So without further ado, I would like to invite Svet to tell us a little bit more about AMP Technologies and all the things that his company and his team are making possible in the world of remote monitoring and portfolio management.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here and to be joined by such a fantastic group of people. As you and Simon mentioned, to discuss something that is at the front of many people's minds as we build up the infrastructure in CNI and solar. And we at AMP are thrilled to be supporting this sector from the software and the remote monitoring side. I suppose I'll just dive right into the presentation here. I think my video is still up. On the tech side, do I need to press anything to get into my slides? There we go. Perfect. So yeah, very quick introduction. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of AMP Technologies, and we specialize in remote monitoring of solar and other renewable energy systems, mostly in emerging markets and mostly in the CNI segment. So what I want to do for my talk is really start at quite a high level. Hopefully you can see the slides here, and at a high level to discuss some of the key trends that we have. So first of all, there is more distributed generation and a higher adoption of renewables, I'd say across the world, but especially in emerging markets, especially in many of the places that don't have very reliable grid access and don't have very well developed infrastructure. With this, we also have an increased level of complexity of the systems that are being installed. So while, of course, in a normal grid, you would just have generation facilities that are centralized with everybody being a consumer. These days, we not only have solar, but we have batteries, diesel generators, wind, and a range of other pieces of equipment that may be installed at sites these days, especially in the CNI context. Now, finally, what makes it possible for us to really have this conversation, what makes it important for us to have this conversation, is the growing level of connectivity and digitization in this space. And that's been led to a large degree by the innovations on the hardware side, by the fact that we can now monitor all sorts of different equipment. We can get that data, we can communicate that data, and build up all sorts of fancy cloud solutions for it. So that's the key sort of the space that we inhabit, and that's great, right? We have a bunch of awesome data coming our way. But then the question is, what is it actually good for? And that's one of the things that we try to tackle at AMP. And I would say that most of the time we're really led by what our customers' needs are. And that's why we're in this space. We're in this space to support our customers and partners with making the most of the data that is now suddenly available to them. I'm going to go through just a couple of different use cases here that are most prevalent. And often when people talk about remote monitoring, they're really thinking about the technical benefits of this. The fact that they can do health monitoring, uptime monitoring, that they can use the data to know whether they need to dispatch a technician or any other technical interventions at sites. But there's really a lot more underneath that and beyond that that can really be done. We can use data for better end user engagement. So for example, when we work at AMP with developers such as Daystar of CNI installations, who can use that data to display the benefit to their end customers, to increase the engagement of their customers with the systems and with the energy that they're providing, increase revenue security, so better billing tools, better project planning, so understanding what is the performance of the systems that I've got in the ground so far, has that matched my expectations and should be doing something different, and increase bankability from a financing perspective. And I think Terje will say quite a bit more on that topic. So using the data to give more confidence to the financiers that your operations are good and that your operations are something that's worth investing in. Now, a few words about AMP, and I'll go pretty quickly here because some of this is reasonably obvious. So what we do is data acquisition, analytics, and business insights. This is really the value chain of data and value and commercial value that we can provide. And what I'm going to do for the rest of the presentation quickly is just go through some of the kinds of things that we can do with this data. First of all, on the acquisition side, we have some pretty extensive integrations with most of the sort of main players in this market, and we continue expanding on that. We do both sort of cloud-to-cloud integrations with the growing number of APIs that are available, but we also have hardware that can be installed at sites to get data from systems that are not natively online, let's say. Then when we get that data in, where I think we really differentiate as a company is in terms of the digital twin models that we can build. So we combine data from different devices. I talked about complexity earlier. So you may have PV, you may have batteries, diesel generators, a grid connection. We combine all of that in one to build a really holistic picture of what is actually happening with your system at your site, both in real time and in longer term in terms of KPI and analytics. So what do we do with that? One thing you can do is what we call AMP Up, is literally across your portfolio of systems, across the different kinds of equipment that you have, get a snapshot view of what the health status is. Get an understanding of whether any of that requires interventions by you or by your team, and really minimize downtimes. You can dig into that. I mean, of course, we've got the data behind it. You can dig into that, get a real deep dive on a single system, for example. You can get alerts and see across your portfolio what the sort of history has been. But most importantly, you can do predictive maintenance. So doing things like understanding if your PV is performing well, or if it's dirty and needs to be cleaned up, understanding if your batteries are operating well, if they're being cycled too much, if they're not the right temperature, etc. And of course, understanding if you have diesel generation, at what point you need to be refueling those generators. Then on the longer term view, you can take that data and look on a monthly, quarterly, or even annual basis into something that we call AMP flow. So that's really taking the helicopter view of what are the actual energy flows in these systems. Where is, on the whole, my energy coming from? Is it coming from solar? Is it coming from diesel? Again, am I cycling batteries, for example, or am I just buying from the national grid? And that builds into so many different commercial use cases for customers. So, for example, billing for an energy service company that's providing a CNI plant and it's operating a system, especially energy as a service companies like Daystar, that I'm sure I'll say much more about. That becomes important, having a really clear, reliable view of where exactly your energy is coming from. Oops. Yeah, that's in the energy. And then one other thing that I wanted to highlight, going back to this point about, at the end of the day, CNI is still an emerging market. It's in our interest of all of us to have more and more of these installations, more and more financing, and more customers. So what we quite enjoy doing is building more customized dashboards that allow our customers to provide their end users with a snapshot of what's happening at their sites, to get them just more engaged in, for example, how much renewable energy am I generating? What are my savings? How much carbon am I offsetting? All these questions that many end users love to have a good deal of visibility over. So that's sort of a snapshot of where we are and some of the things that we do and can be done in this space. Just very quickly to recap, AMP as a company, we've been in existence for a few years. We've got nearly 1,000 systems across the globe. And as you can see in this map, we're mostly active in emerging markets. We see the quickest, most exciting developments taking place in those markets. We're active in about 17 countries around the world, and about 80% of that being in Africa. So it's just such an exciting space to be in at this point. So that was it. Thank you very much for giving me the stage, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. I think you really put the finger on the right topic there. Obtaining data is one thing, but knowing what to do with it and what knowledge and intelligence to get out of it is really the important thing. Probably we could spend several hours to really delve into the different applications that you have, but it's good to already have an overview. And I think our next speaker, Oledo, will maybe tell us a little bit more about what exactly this means from a project developer's point of view and operator of a large portfolio. What exactly your solutions that you've just described actually mean in terms of tangible business, predictive and preventive maintenance. All of these aspects are important from the development side of things. Oledo, welcome and congratulations again. For those of you who did not follow the AFSIA Awards earlier today, Oledo is a proud winner of one of the awards. And I'm really super happy to have you with us today. Your company, Daystar Power, is doing an amazing job on the CNI space, especially. And yes, we'd like to hear a little bit from you about what this world of digitalization actually means for your company on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for joining. So we can just pull up the slides. As John said, my name is Oledo Osoka, and I'm the CEO of Daystar Power, based in Ghana. So Daystar Power provides businesses in West Africa with affordable, reliable, and clean power. We are essentially a full-service company that provides help from design to installation and to maintenance of power solutions in the commercial and industrial segment. We currently operate in 4 countries, and across those countries have deployed more than 180 systems with a capacity of over 11 megawatts. So I think it's important to start with outlining the scale of the problem that we as a company and in this industry are trying to address using digitalization. So let's be very clear. There is an energy crisis in sub-Saharan Africa, right? Almost 600 million people, 2/3 of the continent and more than the population of the EU, don't have access to electricity. The ones that do have access to electricity, and in Nigeria, for instance, where I'm originally from, we see that in the country, about $17 billion is spent every year on diesel and diesel generators. And now let's compare the cost of electricity in Nigeria, around 25 cents, to Norway, which is around 5 cents. And it becomes very clear that businesses in Nigeria spend about 400% more on power than businesses in Norway. And really, as a continent, we absolutely cannot develop industrial economies on the back of diesel generators and expensive or inadequate grids. So I think as an industry, we need to be asking ourselves, how can we effectively and efficiently, considering time, money, and human resources, solve this problem? And this is really at the heart of our mission in Daystar. We're focused on providing cheaper, cleaner, and reliable power. And we use multiple technologies to do this based on our clients' requirements, combining PV with batteries, with generators, all with the aim of reducing our clients' costs and, of course, carbon emissions. With this model, we've rolled out to 180 sites, as I mentioned earlier, in Nigeria, Ghana, where I'm based, Togo, and Senegal, across multiple industries. I think in the last 3 years, this is a snapshot of some of our sites, Coca-Cola, EcoBank's Pan-African headquarters, and we're really proud of our work. I think in the last 3 years, we've built a really remarkable team. We found the right business model, and we've partnered with visionary investors to roll out more than 11 megawatts. But our growth is really reliant on our ability to deploy technology, and it's highly leveraged on digitalization. And I'm going to talk a bit about that, starting with the design stage to the installation stage and maintenance. So each solution is really customized to fit the demands and needs of our clients. We don't rely on their electricity bills or their estimates. For each site that we deploy systems, we have to collect and analyze data to paint a very clear digital picture of how much our clients consume and when they consume that energy. We have audited thousands of sites in West Africa, and the outcome is that we get a very clear sense and data of weather in particular locations, helping us forecast production more precisely. We also have clear data on consumption peculiarities in different industries. And this ultimately helps us to optimize our demands, our designs to match our clients' demands. In the installation stage, it's really critical for us to ensure that the systems that we're deploying match our design assumptions, right? And also that projects are executed within budget. And I think digitalization is at the heart of this. From an operational perspective also, we're able to track and really monitor costs and ensure transparency and accountability through installations. Now, Svet, who went right before me, spoke about how AMP is helping companies like Daystar on digital technology, right? And so the last part of this slide is on around how we provide maintenance and monitoring services. Now, we have a network operating center, which is effectively our digital command center for all our sites. From there, we're able to gather data on performance at sites, which ultimately feeds back into our design process and helps us make adjustments to the operations of our system. With this data, we're really able to provide our clients with more visibility to a very detailed degree on just how the sites and their power functions. This, for instance, helps clients make adjustments. So for example, in a site, we noticed that at night, consumption had increased in a particular period. And we became really clear that what was happening was, to avoid traffic in Lagos, Nigeria, some employees were staying behind to watch football and putting on ACs to the highest degree. But with this information, we were able to relay this to our clients and help them become smarter on how they can minimize and reduce their electricity costs and consumption. In sites where we have storage, we can remotely set the state of charge and also adjust remotely performance of battery and usage. What's also interesting is that we can automate power sources at our sites, so that, for instance, in the daytime, the priority is automatically always solar, and depending on the time of day, the power source can be adjusted automatically to make sure that our clients are always using the cheapest form of electricity. It's also helpful that we can remotely turn systems off and on. Now, this process I've just walked through is entirely based on the digital technology and is remote and helps us maximize uptime and reduce costs. I guess as a company, our modus operandi is really to be more efficient and smart with the data, minimizing the need for deploying people to sites. And I guess with COVID, we've really seen firsthand the importance of building in remote functionality into our operations. So let's think again about the scale of the problem our industry is addressing, right? It really is, how do we light up and power our continent? Now, if we look at the traditional model, we find that in most countries, right, beyond the grid being inadequate and inefficient, the challenges are really around poor management, right? So grid companies don't have detailed data to monitor. If a site in a remote village, for instance, goes offline, very often there's no awareness from the grid company, and they would have to, after the client has called, visit the site to understand what's happening. This inefficiency ultimately leads to the grid losing revenue, higher costs, and these costs are ultimately passed on to the consumers. At Daystar, we believe the energy future cannot be based on such inefficiencies. The future which has begun, and the future which we at Daystar are proud to champion, is one where power systems are decentralized and smart by design. Power systems are automated, where power systems are remote and streamlined, removing the need for physical interactions. It's a future where systems and processes evolve and improve projections based on real-time data, and ultimately costs are reduced because inefficiencies are reduced. And I think this is really the role of digitalization in the C&I segment. Thanks, John. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Oledo. Yeah, very interesting to see to which extent digital solutions are like omnipresent in every single stage of the work that you do. And I'm sure your little story about the watching football sounds quite familiar to all of us who are involved in C&I projects, checking, turning on the kettle for to make tea, or when people are really showing up at the office in the morning. I'm sure this sounds familiar to many of our listeners here. But I mean, this is all super interesting, but this is only possible, of course, and only makes sense if we are doing finance projects. If we are providing energy as a service, this is where digital solutions really come into play. And specifically talking about this topic, we have Teji next, who, as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, leads Empower New Energy, a company specializing in financing CNI installations across Africa. And I would like to invite Teji to tell us a little bit more about how important all those digital aspects of CNI projects have become in your line of work, and what they make possible to just further improve your reach and making more funding available to projects across Africa.
Thank you very much. And first of all, to all of you, I'm very pleased to take part in this session, which actually addressed something we discuss every day in the team. I wonder if I also prepared a presentation, John. So I wonder if it's possible for you to. So if you go to the next, do I touch it to you? How is it? Do I ask you to touch, or can I do the thing myself? You'll do it. Yeah. So just a few words about Empower. So we are not a developer or an operator of power plants, but we are actually an impact investor who is then investing into. So we are based in Oslo, but we are present across Africa. We have raised the impact fund for investing into small and medium-sized renewables. We have built our first CNI project executed and delivered in Ghana, and we're now doing our second one in Nigeria. And we are typically then focusing on projects where the clients are getting certainly savings from renewables, but also high impact in terms of CO2 mitigation and job creation, etc. Maybe we can go to the next one. So what we do, and this is just to give a context for the discussion about digital, is that we are not only an investor, but we are also a kind of co-developer in the sense that we work in partnership with the developers to improve the quality of the project before we then invest in them. And then we manage a portfolio of assets when these are constructed, and we will then do the asset management. Go to the next. And our funders, our main investors are the Norwegian Development Fund, Norfund, and we also have the EU as an investor through Electrify, and then we have a very interesting list of various private impact investors in our fund. And as you see, what we are doing, when we have invested into the projects, you see from the model there that we are de-risking this trial through working with the experienced EPC, O&M companies, and of course, very much of what I'm going to talk now is very much related to how also we interact with our partners. Go to the next slide. So I think what we have seen, and this is something I'd like, is that I think we all are amazed by how our business operations have been transformed very shortly. Of course, COVID has been a kind of a catalyst, but we knew that all these digital technologies that were there. But what we're seeing now, of course, is that this is much more, has been speeded up, much more radical and transformative than we actually believe. So if I just give you a few examples, if we say that we have an operating model which is based on some key pillars, and one key pillar, of course, is that we are not developer, but we are dependent on working with developers across Africa who develop projects and who work with the off-takers. And what we've seen is that now it is extremely interesting to see how our work with developers has been modernized and digitized, and not only developers, but also stakeholders and partners in the various countries. So traveling is much less needed. Of course, you still have the issue of quality of the internet in some places, but in general now we see that meetings can be held, and of course also follow-up coordination in a way which earlier would require a lot more physical meetings. Another way to express this is that we have invested into some cloud-based due diligence platform. So when we started Empower, we saw that there were a number of experiences we had where the due diligence process was very opaque, very difficult for developers to actually understand what happened. And what we have done is to create a cloud-based platform where all the stakeholders have access to and they're all participating in the monitoring of the due diligence and the review. So we see now that this has not only shortened the time, the cycle from time to market, but also created a type of transparency, which is very much welcome. And also another, of course, important thing is that we see that we have been able also to, I can talk about also the modeling, how we've been digitizing the various elements of our business model and put that into a more, you could say, online version of our business financial model, which is then again easier available for partners across. And then, of course, the most challenging thing I have to say is that the key as an investor, we are, of course, extremely concerned about the quality of what is happening during construction time. And, of course, one can very well maybe imagine in the future that drones, etc., will make that possible. But for the moment, we are still dependent on physical presence and follow-up to see what's actually happening on the ground, so during construction phase. So that you could say that, we're talking a lot about the digitalization, but still, building a solar power plant is still very physical work. So being able to be on ground and see actually what's happening is still, but also there we could imagine, of course, that digital innovation will play a key role. And then, of course, the key, of course, innovation we see now is the way asset management and reporting can be enhanced and is being enhanced by, and this is also covered by the earlier presentations. So if you go to the next slide, I will then give you a few then of course examples. So, but one thing is, of course, that it is very important both for us as the manager, but not least also our investors, to be able to of course get data on what's happening in the projects. So what we do now is that we're building it based on the first investments. We'll build it on a platform that will make all these data available real time, and of course our investors will then have access to that as we build this up. This is something which creates trust, but also, of course, is very important to be able to improve, of course, forecasting and verifying the assumptions of what we're doing, and to also to optimize going forward, and also, of course, according to for the reporting. So it enables us to track production real time. You could say that this has always been the case, but of course what we do now, of course, is that there has been a lot of information real time available, but now what we see that there are solutions which makes it possible to integrate this in a way which also links up to other operational data, which is important. And then if you then also look at the investor point of view, I'm not saying that the investors are in a way very dependent on being able to follow real time. But what is important for investors is that we as a manager will have that information. So they are asking, of course, a lot of questions of how we actually monitor and how we are able to use the data. So this is something that we are now putting a lot of work into, is actually building that platform in a way that will make it possible for us to even use more of the data. And if you then go to the next slide, this again brings us to the impact reporting. Of course, we are an impact investment fund. We are reporting a clean energy production, but we're also reporting CO2 savings and other also development goals. So we have set specific targets. So this again is linked to the same, you could say, reporting tool. So we can also say that, if we are trying to be, if you give an example, if you say that you have a very general picture of how much CO2 is saved through solar production. You will reach a certain level of accuracy. But if you have more specific data of how much diesel is actually saved on plant A and plant B, and you bring that into, of course, a common reporting scheme, you're actually able to give a much more exact data as to how much CO2 is saved, instead of just a generic assumption. So this again is to show that the reporting, quality of the reporting is also important for not only for financial reporting, but also for impact reporting. If you go to the next slide, and then so as you see, what we have then is an online portal. So in this portal, we are reporting to the investors, and increasingly we will see that the data from the operating assets real time will also then be made available here. I'm not saying that this is not something we have put online for investors right now, but it is something that will be built into the investor portal as we get more data and better integration tools. So if I should kind of give a short summary of answering the question to which extent digitization, what impact it has seen from investor perspective, I guess I think you have to go back to the fundamental question and say, when you are investing into a solar plant, you are making a number of assumptions, and most of them, one of the most important, of course, is that you are making assumptions on the quality of the equipment. You're making assumptions on the quality and the reliability of the O&M contractor. You are making assumptions on the solar radiation. You're making assumptions on various other aspects. And all of these various important assumptions are on the top of the mind of the investors. So the more exact information we can provide continuously on these things, the more trust will be made. And what will be the effect of that? Well, the effect of that will be, of course, that the cost of capital for solar will decrease. So it will actually increase the market, because the more information we can make it available, the more our investors will be comforted that when we say that we expect a 0.4% yearly degradation, and we expect an uptime of 98%, and we expect ABC, and we can actually prove that real time, and that we correct any deviances real time, then of course it increases the comfort level on the investor side. So all in all, I think the most important message is that digital innovation is going to make solar for CNI more attractive as an investment, class, and it also is going to then thereby reduce the cost of capital to these assets and thereby increase the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terje. Yes, obviously, I mean, all this data becoming just tremendously add transparency of all these projects and reduces uncertainty, and this is typically what financiers love. So if all pieces are coming together, it's a fair assumption to expect that more and more capital will flow into this kind of projects, which I believe is a great thing for everybody here. Well, thank you very much for the three of you for your presentation. We have been receiving a few questions, so if you don't mind, I would like to move to the Q&A section of this session today. One of the first questions that is always on the mind of people is, okay, these solutions are great, but they cost something. And so one of the questions that we've received is there any threshold, is there any limit where after which a solution like the one you propose, starts making economical sense for developers, or are they developed in such a way that you can easily use them even for just one project?
Maybe I'll take that one for a start. I mean, what I would say is that it's never too early to start thinking about what you want to do in terms of the digital functionalities around your, around all the process that you have, whether as a developer or an operator or an investor. There is always a lot of value to be had, and the cost of digital technologies these days is generally so low. I wouldn't be able to put an exact figure of what percentage of a specific installation you would need to, what percentage of the capex you might need to invest in monitoring, but it's a tiny percentage. I mean, the processing power and the communications capabilities are so cheap. You can get a data logger for $50 or $100. You can, you're paying $10 a month for internet access, for example. I mean, that can be the cost of having that facility, and the value that a platform like AMP, for example, specifically can bring, of course, increases with the complexity and the size of a portfolio. But even at the single installation stage, there's always a lot of value to be had. And I would encourage anybody who is in this space to think about what they want to do there. Even the vendors themselves will provide very, very good solutions in many cases these days. So that's always a great starting point if you don't have very, very specific or very sophisticated needs.
And I would like to ask the same question to Oledo. In your case with Daystar Power, was there at some point any consideration about cost, or did you immediately jump on the solution because you saw the great potential and the great benefits of it? How did you perceive these aspects of things from a pure economic point of view?
Yeah, I guess, thank you for the question. I guess with every potential technology we deploy, right, we have to weigh the cost and the impact. Speaking specifically about digitalization and monitoring, it's less than 1% of total project cost, right? So if you're looking from a cost perspective and also weighing the benefit, which is greater visibility on production, more accurate data that helps us monitor and manage the systems more efficiently, the benefits definitely outweigh the costs, and it's definitely worthwhile. I think in the industry, the only sustainable way to operate as a developer and maintain our solutions is to have this technology.
Thank you very much. Another question we have from the listeners, from Tanya, is many of those projects that you might come across or have been working on are in remote locations. Sorry, this is rainy season in Kigali, so you might be hearing the thunder behind me. They're in remote locations. Remote location generally goes hand in hand with core connectivity. How does this impact the working of the tools and the software, and what are potential solutions around this? I don't know who would like to take this question first. Svet, maybe?
Sure. The great thing about this leapfrogging of mobile connectivity in Africa that everybody is so familiar with these days is that you can get a mobile signal pretty much everywhere. And even if it's a slow 2G sort of high latency connection, that's already enough to do some pretty high quality monitoring. It's not like you're sending a video stream across. You need to get a little bit of data, maybe a few times a day, to know that your system's working fine. So one thing that we say to pretty much all of our customers who are concerned about this is, let's give it a try, and it will probably work in most cases. Of course, if you have some very specific requirements, maybe you need to install a satellite or something like that. But the pace of development of communications infrastructure in Africa is mind-blowing at this point, and generally it's achieved.
Oledo, in the case of your project portfolio, have you been challenged by connectivity which ends up being outside of your control, and were you able to find alternatives to such problems?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Svet. I mean, you find connectivity in most areas where our commercial and industrial clients are. But in cases where connectivity is an issue, I mean, we can have local servers, right, to collect the data and then upload that in the future when connectivity is improved. But generally, in the areas where we have commercial and industrial clients, connectivity is not an issue, but there are ways around mitigating connectivity issues using FTP servers.
Thank you very much. Terje, I would like to ask this next question to you.
Yes.
We have different monitoring on the market. It's a nascent industry, but we already see different providers come up with solutions. There is equipment providers, equipment manufacturers who have their own monitoring solutions. There are companies that develop their solution in-house with their own developers, and then there is like third-party developers. Yeah, I would like to have your point of view on what you perceive are the pros and cons, and I wanted to ask you this question first because you are the one who is potentially dealing with different systems and that you have to manage everything. Svet provides his solution. Oledo in her company decided on one type of provider, but you are exposed to probably many. How do you perceive the differences and the advantages of each?
Yes, so if you look at it from the way we see our business going forward, is that we have already, and we will have, of course, solar installations typically behind the meter pure solar installations, but there will also be hybrid installations where battery and diesel is involved. And then we also have in our pipeline, although we have not yet made the first investment, but we have in our pipeline also a number of small hydro projects. So what we are looking for is a partner who can help. Of course, we will have the data from the various providers of solutions to these for various plants, but what we are looking for, of course, is a partner who can help us to set up a system which will integrate this and relate to our own reporting system. And what I can tell you is that we are in the process of kind of discussing with a couple of various solution providers for this. It looks like we will go for a third-party software type partner, because then we will not be directly linked to any of the equipment suppliers, but we will, of course, be independent. So that is a difficult question, because you also need to keep the cost down and you don't want to oversize it compared to what you need. But we have to do something today which is robust, the way we see our business in 3 to 4 years, when we have multiple geographies, multiple type of technologies. So that is currently on the agenda, and that's the way what we're thinking right now.
Thank you very much. And you on your side, Oledo, at some point you've probably been exposed to the choice, should we develop it ourselves? Should we just find a company that has worked on this topic? How was the thought process on your side from a developer's point of view? Where did you see the value, and why did you end up choosing for a third-party solution?
I think our approach is joint. So to the degree that a part of our requirements can be met by companies like AMP, we incorporate their technology, but we try to be as vast and have as much depth as possible. So for that, in-house, we also have a team that's focused on getting more visibility on data and the performance of our systems. I think at a basic minimum, a company like AMP, right, we can work with them because with their solutions, we at a very basic minimum have weather, irradiance, production, warning when there are particular issues at sites. But as the complexity of our systems have increased, we've had to work together with AMP to sort of create back-end more levers for adapting. So for instance, in sites where we have battery systems, we've had to think through together, how can we forecast the battery health and lifespan based on the current usage of the batteries? with diesel generators, right, we've had to think about, okay, well, how do we bring in automation to turn off these generators, etc. So to answer your question succinctly, I think our approach is partnership. We leverage existing technology from companies like AMP, but also in-house, we have had to build capacity to stretch and grow our capacity as well.
Thank you very much. Zweb, I won't ask you the question about what you think is the best way forward. Your answer biased, but I do have a question specifically from for you from the audience, from Pim. There are a few questions about how is the data actually collected? Do you have some kind of hardware that you install at your customer sites? Is there any chip at some point, GSM related? How do you actually collect all this data?
Thanks, John. It's a great question. It's something that I think is on the minds of a lot of people who are considering their options here. What we've always wanted to do is make it as easy as possible for the developer, the operator, the financier to get the data that they need and not have to worry about how it gets there. So what we've actually done is taken a multi-pronged approach ourselves to this to be able to collect data either through the APIs that some of the vendors these days provide, or in some cases we work with vendors directly, so they essentially push data to our platform. And in cases where none of these are possible, we then would put our own data loggers at the sites, which allow us to then, read equipment, as I said previously, that may have never been online. So diesel fuel level sensors, for example, or other controllers that are there. So we can combine these different streams of data into a single model and then allow the developer operator to do what they need with the data and to provide that, to get the value out of that data without having to worry about how exactly they've got the data. So in very short, again, the succinct answer is we can do both.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the clock and it looks like we are nearing the end of our session today, but I still have one question that I would like to ask to all of you. It's a bit of the million-dollar question. And I'm going to ask you a very brief answer. But we're still just in the beginning of digitalization, especially for this segment. I would like to hear from you what you think we may expect in the next 3 to 5 years in terms of further development and enabling, unlocking a lot more possibilities for the CNI sector. Maybe I can start with Oledo, and then we'll move on to Svet and Terje.
Sure, thanks. I think we can expect to see rapid development in digitalization, right? And this is really fueled by the growing demand for renewable energy on the continent. If we look back as early as 2 years ago, a lot of the capabilities we're discussing now, right, being able to turn off systems were not capabilities that were being discussed in West Africa. So judging by how rapidly things have evolved in the last 2 years, I think it's safe to expect very faster evolution and the industry to develop rapidly.
Thank you. That's how do you see the future? Digitalization.
I'm not sure I could agree with Oledo more. I think it's really about the next wave of business opportunities and value that people can capture from the data. So there's no question that we're going to be getting more and more data and more systems are going to be connected. To me, the question is, how do we translate that into business value? How do we translate it into a faster rate of expansion and growth for this sector? And I think that's what we're going to be getting much better at doing over the next few years.
Thank you. And Terje, what about you? How do you see the future of digitalization, especially in the CNI space?
Yes, so I think it's very important to express that the technology here opens fantastic opportunities, but the regulations are still a very important limiting factor. So when I look at, of course, what could be done, of course, it's very easy to foresee a situation where you as an owner and manager of solar assets, these decentralized solar assets, that you could lock that into, of course, the whole load situation in that areas, and you could imagine with the very kind of simple solutions, you could imagine that you can actually optimize your production so that in periods when your client is not using electricity, you will be able to find in the area what kind of uses is the right, and you will be able to feed into other users, or you can even, if you are locked into connected to the company's operations, you could even imagine that you will have kind of demand response type of activity where actually you also can reduce the demand in order to be able to inject even more electricity to other uses. So, I mean, this is what you see, of course, happening already in California and other places. This is already a reality in other markets, and it certainly is going to happen, but it's going to come to Africa as well. But the situation right now is that the technology is there, but the regulations are limiting what can be done. So I think what we're going to see is that there's going to be enormous pressure on utilities and regulators in order to be able to adapt the system to make so that the digitalization can lead to a more efficient use of energy and a more efficient use, and of course the lowest cost of energy for the users.
It sounds like there is an exciting future ahead of us. Possibilities, lots of needs, but also lots of solutions. So yes, very exciting for all of us here in Africa, making more electricity, more solar electricity available to many companies. Thanks to all of you for doing the work that you're doing and for making that energy available. And thanks for participating in today's session. We'd also like to thank all the listeners for staying with us. And of course, thanks to AF for giving us an opportunity to discuss this very important topic. I wish you all a very good rest of the day, afternoon or evening, and I hope we will be in touch again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Total Eren is a global independent power producer. We develop, finance, invest in, build and operate wind, solar and hybrid power plants globally. We stay owner of our power plants over the long term and sell electricity to our clients worldwide, public utilities, private industrials, and rural communities. Across continents, we develop greenfield energy solutions of different sizes and for both public and private customers. In less than 10 years, we have built up a substantial and diversified portfolio of about 3 gigawatt of renewable energy assets worldwide. In particular, we tackle the needs of energy-intensive industrials, like mining companies. Clean power can be a sound business and sustainable decision. Benefits of renewable energy solutions are numerous. It can decrease their OPEX, hedge against fuel price volatility, improve their carbon footprint, enhance their social license to operate, and allow them to leave a sustainable legacy after business closure. In Burkina Faso, for instance, we built a 15 megawatt solar power plant at the IM Gold Isikan gold mine. Connected to a large HFO-fired power plant, the solar power plant will smoothly inject competitive and clean energy throughout the day, while a tailor-made hybrid energy management architecture ensures at all time the stability and reliability of the mine power supply. Thanks to a dynamic calculation of spinning reserve based on the available solar energy production, the engine's parameters, and an optimized operating strategy, the solar power plant will help the mine decrease its fuel consumption by 6 million liters per year and cut emissions of CO2 by 18,500 tons per year. Here at Isakan and everywhere in the world, we design and customize the most economical solutions for our clients and bring them to financial close and execution.
Think when you live in darkness, always. Living in darkness is extremely difficult and dangerous. You cannot think big in time you live in darkness.
Households living in darkness typically end their day at sunset. By having access to light, it allows them to improve their quality of life and spend more time together as a family and community.
2 out of 3 people in sub-Saharan Africa lack access to power, a number that is being revised upward as population growth outpaces electrification. This strangles prospects right from the get-go, compromising education, health, and entrepreneurship. This infrastructure deficit also constrains the industrial development needed to address poverty and to enable business and economic growth. But there is a light. The requirement for additional power generation represents a significant opportunity in sub-Saharan Africa. Annual investment in the power sector of $46 billion is required until 2040. There is a strong push by global institutions to support the power sector, and a growing track record of best-of-breed bankable IPPs. Cooperation between public and private sector is fundamental to creating these energy infrastructure opportunities, with funders, operators, and local partners working together to unlock this potential. And as the largest and most experienced institutional infrastructure investor in Africa, AIM is in the driving seat of this progress. With a 19-year track record, AIM's commitment to Africa's social development is core to its pursuit of improved power, transport, and energy infrastructure across the continent. AIM's recent investment in Bbox is one that really brings this investment ethos to life. An affordable, clean, off-grid solar energy solution being rolled out in Rwanda, Kenya, and the DRC. With attractive market dynamics, credible partners, a staged investment and scalable business model, and a strong ESG impact, this investment has impacted over 600,000 people thus far and provided more than 63,000 school children with the electricity they need to study well and step towards their future potential. From off-grid renewables and grid-tied renewable IPPs to multi-fuel power stations, our investment portfolio is designed with one thing in mind: powering the African continent with opportunities. In Mali, the lack of reliable grid power, much needed for both industry and mining, is a significant barrier to growth, with much of the available energy imported at a high premium. Enter Albatross Energy Mali, a €133 million thermal power investment achieved through strong partnerships, flexible funding structures, upfront concession agreements, and sovereign security structures, resulting in access to power with increased reliability and reduced cost, enabling the wheels of industry and economic growth to turn more rapidly, as they have through AIM's investments across the continent in South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Kenya, Rwanda, DRC, Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Through solar PV and off-grid generation, wind, thermal, hydro, and midstream power solutions, creating the reliable, efficient power underpinning inter-Africa industry, trade, and socio-economic growth. With its market-leading experience, expertise, and stakeholder relationships, AIM is seeking to invest in long-term assets, providing the bedrock for robust economic growth, mitigating risk through strategic investments which bridge the infrastructure deficit, making a tangible contribution to local economies and communities alongside superior investor returns, and contributing to the global growth agenda encompassed by the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. For almost 2 decades, we have garnered over 550 collective years of industry experience, growing assets under management of more than $2.1 billion through 7 funds and 56 portfolio companies operating in 17 countries across the continent. With a power portfolio of 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity, including almost 30% of the renewable energy being delivered to South Africa's national grid. We are AIM, and we are committed to powering progress on the African continent.